Antz and A Bug's Life are two films that have more similarities than just their premise. While Antz was released in 1998, the history of its production actually began in 1988, a whole decade prior, when Disney pitched an idea for a film about a pacifist worker ant teaching lessons of independent thinking to his militaristic colony. This pitched film named Army Ants would ultimately not take off. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Katzenberg was saying, "Screw y'all," and leaving Disney after a feud with CEO Michael Eisner. This led him to co-founding the animation company DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, who planned on rivaling Disney. A rather bold attempt in this time period. They would then start production on Antz in May 1996, after having already started production on The Prince of Egypt, which will be discussed in a later video. In the other realm of the animation industry, Pixar was beginning to turn their thoughts to their next film in the summer of 1994. During a lunchtime conversation between John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, and John Ranft, they pitched ideas for their upcoming films, such as Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, WALL-E, and of course, A Bug's Life. Lasseter was already drawn to the idea of a story featuring insects, as the simple surfaces of insects would be in reach of the CGI technology in this time period. Using the old Aesop's fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper, as inspiration, they threw around ideas until production started in earnest in early 1995. A Bug's Life got released a month after Antz in 1998, which the production and release of these similar films resulted in a public feud between Pixar and DreamWorks. Due to the similar premise of these films and their company's rivalry, these two films have been compared as to which one is better than the other. Come along with me as I overanalyze these two CGI bug movies from the 90s. And as always, everything in this video is my own personal opinion. If you have a different opinion from me, that's great, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Even though both movies are about an ant and their colony, the movies do have differing plots. A Bug's Life is about an ant named Flick, who is in love with a princess named Ada. He is an inventor that messes up a lot, but gosh darn it, he is just so nice and wants to help. These ants are under the oppressive rule of a group of grasshoppers, who forces them to pick food for them in exchange for protection, but the grasshoppers have taken their relationship to the point of exploitation. Flick pulls a whoopsie and knocks the entire offering stone into a river like a dumbass, taking it to a whole new level of clumsy. The grasshoppers are less than pleased at the lack of food when they arrive, especially the leader of the gang, Hopper.
Where's my food?
Hopper gets even angrier when Flick stands up to his bullying antics that he uses to scare Dot, who is the younger sister of Ada, and the other ants. So he demands double the order of food in a short amount of time. Flick wants to make up for what he did, and decides that they should go out to find warrior bugs to fight the grasshoppers, and volunteers to go himself. Ada and her council decide to go with it. Not because they necessarily believe in him, but because he can't screw anything up if he's gone. Rest in pieces. Flick does manage to find other bugs in the city, but in a comedic misunderstanding, he finds washed up circus bugs instead of warrior bugs. They do keep up the facade long enough to build a bird that they plan to scare Hopper away with, but on the eve of Hopper's arrival, the threads of the lie become unraveled, and Flick, along with the circus bugs, are sent away from Ant Island. But when the grasshoppers come and round up the ants, Hopper planning on squishing the queen ant in order to make a statement, Dot goes to find Flick and convinces him to come back. Working together with the other children of the ant colony and the circus bugs, the bird plan seems to go well at first, until the ringleader of the circus, thinking it's an actual bird that's killing his entire circus act crew, sets the bird on fire, and Hopper sees that the colony tried to trick him, making him really mad. But Flick inspires the colony to fight back against the grasshoppers, and leads Hopper to his demise, freeing the ant colony once and for all. Antz, on the other hand, is a movie about an ant named Z who falls in love with a princess named Bala. Sound familiar? Z is a neurotic worker who struggles with life in the colony and the fact that he is ultimately insignificant, as the good of the entire colony is prioritized over the happiness of the individual. Z ends up breaking the rules in order to get close to Bala again after they meet at a bar, which ends up with him comedically kidnapping Bala, and instead of going back to the colony, Z decides he wants a chance going to Insectopia to have freedom, Bala following him since it's dangerous trying to head back to the colony alone. Meanwhile, Mandible, the general officer that controls the entire colony's military, has been running an evil scheme to weed out the soldiers loyal to the colony's queen and wipe out all members of the colony that are not strong or loyal to him. Though, he needs Princess Bala as his wife, since he needs her to increase the population of the new colony he'd create. Big yikes. So he sends his second-in-command Cutter to take back Bala. Luckily, we don't have have to go too far that creepy mandible route, as Z returns to the colony to free Bala, and they attempt to warn the Queen and stop the workers from continuing the tunnel that would flood the colony. However, they are too late and the anthill begins to flood. Z inspires the colony to escape by building a ladder to the roof of the anthill and dig their way out, which Colonel Cutter decides to betray Mandible by helping out the colony, which results in Mandible's demise when he tries to tackle Cutter into the anthill, but Z takes the fall. But everything ends up okay for our protagonist, as Z is praised for his heroism, and the ants rebuild the colony together. There are elements of both plotlines that are similar, but honestly, both movies are pretty different as well in their plot, themes, and characters. While both cover stories that have been done before, I think Antz does a bit of a better job at seeming more original and fresh with their ideas. Unfortunately, A Bug's Life covers a lot of cliches such as the awkward protagonist that always seems to mess up but has a heart of gold, and the infamous liar revealed story, which, if you don't like that kind of story, I don't think you will like A Bug's Life, since there isn't that much that it does to make it feel fresh or original. A Bug's Life story isn't necessarily bad, but it's pretty predictable. Now that we've gone briefly over the plots, let's take a deep dive into each of these elements. A Bug's Life's themes are a bit more simple and easier for kids to digest than Ant's themes are, but Ant's themes can appeal to more of an older audience. A Bug's Life is about not lying to others and the themes of a small minority using bullying and intimidation to force the working majority in economic exploitation, though broken down into a group of grasshoppers taking advantage of a colony of ants. Antz isn't necessarily subtle with its themes, but it does go over heavy themes such as worker alienation, with the worker ants working tirelessly towards a supposed greater good that can't be fully comprehended or appreciated. There's also the themes of individualism and collectivism, as Z feels insignificant in the system of the colony when it leans too much towards the philosophy of collectivism. However, it does show that there is importance to the entire group, not just certain individuals, when the greater good of the colony was thought of in the end of the movie rather than just Mandible's selfish goals. And of course, the themes of authoritarianism and freedom are explored, as the ant colony is a system that literally determines your entire course of life since birth, and Z initially leaves the colony in the middle of the film to search for freedom. I find the themes of Antz to be a little bit more interesting and fun to analyze. However, I'm not saying that there isn't anything interesting in A Bug's Life either. I just have different things that appeal to me now that I'm older, than what interested me when I was younger. However, A Bug's Life is pretty good if you just want a simple story with simple characters. Okay, I'ma just say this, I found Z to be more interesting and memorable than Flick. As mentioned before, Flick is a pretty generic protagonist. However, I'm not saying that kids are gonna dislike him, they're gonna like him just fine and he's a good role model, but I never found him to be the highlight of Bug's Life either. He was easily outshone by other characters, but he served his role alright. However, I will give him credit for how he stood up to Hopper in the end, even when his life was in danger. Z is not the typical children's movie protagonist. He is neurotic and struggles to find his place in the colony since he feels so insignificant. And of course, he has a little bit more of that DreamWorks edge that they like to add to their characters. I find him to have more character than Flick, and I love his snappy and more adult-centered humor. Both Bala and Ada are equal in footing with how strong their characters are for me, though they are very different. Bala is bored by the predictable comfort of the palace as well as the passionless behavior of the other ants, especially her fiancé General Mandible, who doesn't show her much love or even spend much time with her. She is also not looking forward to her life of taking over when the queen ant passes away, as her life would just be producing offspring every 5 seconds. She at first thinks that she wants something exciting and finds it for a bit when she meets Z in the bar and sees how different he acts when trying to impress her, then starts to regret leaving the comfort of her ant colony when thrust into a world where her princess status doesn't really matter and her life is in danger, but then sees the value in freedom and individualism. Ada is learning how to take over for the queen ant in the future. She is not confident in herself and feels like the entire ant colony is just waiting for her to mess up, which her and Flick are able to connect on. However, as she gains confidence, she is able to lead the rest of the colony up in battling the grasshoppers after seeing Flick's bravery. The villains are also both strong in their own ways, with both being intimidating and funny. General Mandible is more political and sneaky in his methods, and the way that he uses his own control and manipulation in the colony to almost get his way is incredible with how it ties together. The speeches he makes are really memorable, and I like how diplomatic he is.
A soldier knows that the life of an individual ant doesn't matter. What matters is the colony. He's willing to live for the colony, to fight for the colony, to die for the colony.
He only loses his cool at the end when Cutter betrays him right before he's going to get everything he wants. Hopper more so uses intimidation tactics to scare the Antz into continuing to serve him, but also with some manipulation.
Listen, if you don't keep your end of the bargain, then I can't guarantee your safety, and there are insects out there that will take advantage of you. Someone could get hurt.
He is more explosive than Mandible, but is able to give pretty good monologues. The peak for him is probably the grain scene. When 3 of the grasshoppers at the bar decide that they don't want to go back to the colony because they see no point in it, Hopper plays it cool just enough to get them to loosen their defenses and spill the beans of how they really feel, then uses the grain as a metaphor for the ants of how one doesn't really hurt you, but that crushes the grasshopper at the bar under a pile of grain to show how if the whole colony stands up to them, then their way of life is over.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
There's a lot I could go into for his character, but this video would be incredibly long if I did so. So I recommend watching Monsterful Media's in-depth analysis on Hopper's character and his speech in the canteen. And of course, both characters get a satisfying death scene at the end. Though I will say Hopper's is more memorable than Mandible's. Mandible just gets the standard fall to his death scene, that way no blame falls on the protagonist. For Hopper, Flick leads him to a bird's nest where he is eaten alive by baby birds. It's pretty brutal. A Bug's Life has more recurring side characters than Antz does, however that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all better quality. The recurring ant characters for the most part in A Bug's Life are pretty dull, though Dot is pretty adorable. For the grasshoppers, other than Hopper, the only recurring characters are mostly just his dim-witted brother, who does create some pretty entertaining interactions with Hopper, but sometimes talks too much. And then another grasshopper who is... I don't even know what the hell's going on here. Though the grasshoppers as a whole are all pretty intimidating. The entire circus cast, however, is hilarious, and other than Hopper are the highlight of the film. There are so many good running gags and jokes that come from them, there are too many to count. And I mean, just look at the scene when they realize that they were brought to Ant Island to fight in battle, not brought in for a performing gig. In Antz, all of the side characters are pretty memorable. We got Barbatus, a soldier ant that Z befriends in battle and gets a really brutal death scene. Weaver, Z's best friend who gets a lot of good one-liners in, Azteca, the tough female worker ant that Z works with, and so many other good characters that are iconic and funny. I will mention the score and sound design briefly as just a casual listener, though keep in mind I'm not really a good score analyst person. I think both movies are great in the sound design department and in really upping the danger factor of the world around the ants. Birds sound like raptors, rain like missiles, and grasshopper wings like drones buzzing in A Bug's Life, and then we get the entire termite scene in Antz. The score in A Bug's Life was good, but I can't say that any of the tunes are really memorable to me either. If you pointed a gun to my head right now and asked me to hum a tune to one of the songs in A Bug's Life, first of all, I can't follow rhythm or carry a tune to save my life. Second of all, I can't really think of any that are super memorable. For Antz though, we got all kinds of songs that got stuck in my head, especially the first song that plays when establishing the colony. Oh, it's so good. I think the most interesting aspect of both movies is how they choose to do the scaling. Things like raindrops, cans, and coins are tiny to us, but huge in the world of bugs. I think A Bug's Life's strong suits comes in the creativity of how common objects are used, while Ant's strength is in the cinematography and how they really scale common objects and bugs to up the danger to our protagonists. Not saying that both movies don't have these elements, since A Bug's Life does have the birds and raindrops as mentioned earlier, and Antz has the colony working together to form wrecking balls, and the entirety of Insectopia, which is just an overflowing garbage can. But then we got the Bug City and A Bug's Life, which is literally just an assortment of garbage under a porch, as well as how they built the fake bird out of parts of a tree. And then in Antz, all the bugs are exaggerated in their scale to the ants to make the outside world more intimidating. Water drops and gum at the bottom of shoes are death traps, termites are brutal killing machines, and the sunlight coming through a magnifying glass is like a laser. And the way that the ants seem so small compared to their landscapes, and how Z takes in the sights of the world outside his colony for the first time looks breathtaking. Though I will say that A Bug's Life made some environments a lot more fun. In Antz, while it was creative that Insectopia was an overflowing trash can, they don't have that much fun with it. I mean, Z makes snow angels in a powdered donut, and they use a worm as a roller coaster and an apple, but it felt like A Bug's Life was more creative in this regard. So, which one is the better movie? The more colorful and child-friendly Bug's Life, or the more gritty and adult-focused Antz? While the two movies have been compared for 25 years, oh my god, now I feel old. Even though this might feel like a cop-out, I'm gonna say that comparing these movies is like comparing apples and oranges. For me personally, I enjoy Antz more overall. However, there are still things to love in A Bug's Life, and there are things to like and dislike in both movies. If you love brighter colors, a simpler story, or something for younger or broader audiences, you're going to like A Bug's Life. But if you hate the light reveal plot, or want something grittier for older audiences, or something with more adventure, you're probably going to like Antz more. Both movies give an interesting take on the world of bugs, and discussing some deeper themes that can be understood by younger audiences. Neither of them are the greatest movie of all time in my eyes, but they are classics nonetheless. If either of them sound like they're up your alley, or if you're just looking for some good old nostalgic fun, I highly recommend popping in either movie. Have you ever seen an Antz or A Bug's Life before? If you did, which one do you prefer? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that little notification bell right down there if you want to see more. Until next time, this is Antz Macabre, signing out. Bye!